Welcome back to the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I'm CDJ, joined by Tommy and JB. Guys, we had a little time off. Did you make the most of it?
No, just twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the game to release still. I mean,
you got a long wait, man.
I know. I mean, my thumbs are going to get tired by next year.
Waiting for those rosters to drop.
Yeah.
Have they done yet, Chris?
Have they released them yet?
I hope they're working hard on them. I thought it was weird, and I got to show this text that Tommy sent us. Okay, I thought it was weird when Tommy said he wanted to go to his island for rest and relaxation. That's fine. But he said it isn't like an entire conference will implode and cease to exist by the time we record again. LOL wink emoji. I thought that was really weird.
I mean, what can I say? I knew it would happen that way.
2 weeks off in the middle of summer, you think nothing would change? I can't keep track of who plays where. With years, I don't know what year anybody's playing, what year they are. With transfer portal, I don't know where they're at. But it's still my favorite sport. If somebody told you that 10 years ago, would you have believed them that this is where we're at?
Begrudgingly, with kind of everything changing so fast, it's still my favorite sport. But at the same time, they lose me a little bit each time something drops.
I'm sure Rutgers can't wait for that trip to UCLA.
As long as the check clears, I don't think they care.
I'm not worried about the football teams. I'm worried about the Olympic sports. I mean, imagine the diving team having to fly all the way across the country for a meet and then be back for school on Monday or something. But,
especially like basketball that has midweek games, or any sport that has midweek games. The football with the weekend, they're generally going to be fine.
Yeah, and they'll be ready. They'll be flying the cheapest flight possible too.
But while we were gone, we've started the college football pick'em on ESPN.com. You can go to gamingtailgate.com to get the login information. It's free to join, and the winner will get a $20 PlayStation Network or Amazon or Nintendo Switch or Xbox gift card, whatever they want. We just wrapped up
whatever they want.
Well, it's $20, I should say, within reason. $20 gift card. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. And our Madden 24 giveaway ended just a little bit ago. Xbox winner at Realist into World. PS5 winner at Ryan_Miller 3039. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at Gaming Tailgate. We always have giveaways going on. Thanks to EA for those copies of Madden. That was great. People were really excited for it. Something I wanted to shout out. A lot of people were really thankful for the opportunity. There were a lot of comments that came in and said, "Thanks for doing this. Thanks for putting copies out for us." $70 is a lot of money in this day and age. So I think it's nice that they had the opportunity to win it. And it sure is fun and appreciated. And one of the guys, I think it was Ryan, already hit me up and said a big thank you. So again, everyone who entered, thanks for joining, and keep following us because we'll have more giveaways in the future.
Yeah, that $70 price tag is nothing to sneeze at. I went to purchase it and I'd forgotten that it had gone up, and I had to at least stop and think about it, whether that $10 was worth it or not.
I think that's something when college football comes out next year, that there's going to be a lot of people who, if they got to buy a console and then they see that $70 tag, they're going to be wondering, is it really worth it? Did I save my pennies long enough for those 10 years to afford this?
Well, I mean, at the same time, of course, the consoles are more expensive, but I mean, their games were that expensive when Nintendo 64 was out. So it's Super Nintendo. Even games were that price at Super Nintendo. I remember Street Fighter being $70 on Super Nintendo back in the day. So the game prices are not a surprise, but obviously the consoles are much more expensive nowadays.
Of course, when you go to pay at the checkout and you see that number, you don't care what it was 10, 20 years ago. You just need to know how much money's in my account right now. Is it enough to cover this, or am I going to have to eat ramen for a week to cover this? And speaking of the game, while we were gone, lots of little news relating to the game. The first one being the game is still slated for a summer 2024 release. This is something that I'm not really sure why it was news. And once we get to the end of this story, we'll find out that EA also kind of wondered why this was news. Started with On3 reporting back around August 8th that EA Sports confirmed to one of their writers that the college football franchise will return next summer. Great, right? That's for like wildfire. Everybody was talking about it. So in the article, EA Sports had confirmed to them that it's coming in 2024 in response to more lawsuit news, which we seem to keep getting on the regular. So I'm wondering if part of this information is that every time we hear more about the Brander Group suing EA or EA suing the Brander Group back, that some group, some media outlet likes to report that it could be a possible delay. Because I see lots of people in the community, every time this happens, I see more people saying, "Hey, man, I heard this game's getting delayed." Technically, we don't have a release date, and they definitely haven't delayed it. So I think it's one of those that every time there's legal news, people think the worst. So EA puts out a statement, then the statement the game's coming becomes news. It's like this vicious cycle we're stuck in now until we actually get a release date.
And honestly, that's probably mostly for investors to say, hey, ignore the news. We're still releasing the game. So, I mean, like you said, they haven't announced anything officially in terms of release date other than it's coming next summer and things like that. I mean, it's not like they're trying to get your money to purchase the game today. So really, at the end of the day, I think it's targeted towards investors, and they just got to kind of keep pushing that up the hill.
And those articles are just clickbait. Let's recycle the news, try to get more clicks. That's all that basically is.
Because it gets big traffic. It trends almost every time that this stuff comes out. So, and this is going to seem like we're in an old episode. We're not on loop here. This is not a repeat. John Reesberg, the VP of Global Communications for EA Sports and Racing, says this is not news. We first shared last November that we are targeting summer of 2024 for the release of EA Sports College Football. Nothing has changed those timelines. So again, it seems like we're going to get these random stories until EA finally announces a release date, which personally I don't expect until early spring of next year. So brace yourselves. We're going to get lots of these stories.
I mean, I think we'll start to get some more news before spring of next year. I think we'll at least get some like actual coverage of the game, probably just like a sizzle trailer or something like that around the time of the college football playoffs. But again, I think that will settle some people down just to see that there's something tangible that they can actually see.
Right.
On the next Gaming Tailgate podcast, we have confirmed that they're looking at next summer for the release date.
That's going to be the clip at the end of the show, by the way. Thank you for giving me a good one there, JB. Also, while we were gone, during the EA investors call, CEO Andrew Wilson stated that many schools are on board and that they will continue working to get real players into the title. Again, not a lot of detail, but I did think it was newsworthy in the regard that this was mentioned during the investors call, because EA usually never gets too far ahead of themselves when they discuss games there. But again, that goes back to Tommy's earlier point. I think they're trying to calm investors because there's so much uncertainty with these lawsuits, and media outlets keep reporting a possible delay when EA's said nothing of the sort. So again, I think we're, like we said earlier, just in a vicious cycle right now.
And it's only going to keep continuing for 11 more months, probably. Well, not 11, but
till they announce the release date. There's more legal stuff, and we have more stuff coming this fall with the legal. Once they,
they could announce a release date and still delay it. So I mean,
well, it's true.
Even when they announce a release date, ain't the end of it. So yeah, it may be 11 months of this.
Speaking of lawsuit news, I mean, a show would not be complete if we didn't have more lawsuit news to talk about. From Pete Nakos at On3, EA swings back at the Brander Group, filing a motion to dismiss the lawsuit against the video game. The quote here, Brandar's tortious interference claim fails because, by the template's terms, student athletes retain the right to individually license their NIL. And this news just came out in the last day or so. Brandar files back at EA. They're filed an amended complaint and opposition brief to EA's motion. So again, back and forth in the legal realm until they actually get into the court of law. Again, spin cycle, not an old episode, more legal news, and really nothing getting settled either way. Brandar thinks they have the rights to negotiate for their athletes. EA says, no, we can work with them directly.
What a great game of tennis we got here.
I mean, on some level, I wonder if Brandar considers them like a sports agency in that case. I mean, because if I was an agent for an athlete, then yes, I would want you to negotiate with me. So, I mean, on some level, they may have some leg to stand on, but at the same time, I think, I don't think they have exclusivity to these athletes for all deals. I mean,
they're getting left out of the cold, and that's why they're being pissy and throwing lawsuits.
There's a lot of money.
Yeah, they're seeing their money get drained when, if EA can sign them, then so can the Pizza Hut down the street or something. So
it's like, and then who's probably got more lawyer money, Brandar or EA?
It kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth if you're somebody who's being represented by Brandar, and it's like, yeah, they're fighting for me, but at the same time, like, okay, you negotiated and you lost. I mean, you tried to get the contract, you tried to win it, and you lost. At what point? And even on Brandar's website, it says that, yeah, they consider 3 or more to be a group license, but that's their own personal thing. But they also go on to later say that athletes have the right to sign their own NIL deals outside of Brandar. So it's one of those that kind of have it both ways. I mean,
that's case closed at that point.
And you got to wonder, like, when are these guys, it's in their name, and these athletes, you got to wonder when these athletes are going to start to think this is hurting my brand, because rightfully so, Ed O'Bannon and Sam Keller ran through for taking away one of our favorite games for over a decade. Now you got these people being represented by Brandar. Now their brand is going to look like crap because they're being represented by a company that's trying to block again block the game from coming out.
Yeah, that is
so
true.
again, so you got to the athletes have got to look and say, do I want to be represented by these jokers now, or and that I think it's a lose-lose situation for Brander.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there, I think, as well. But at the same time, could you name a single athlete that's being represented by Brander today?
I never even heard of them until they filed a lawsuit. So
exactly. So I mean,
yep.
it's somewhat anonymous. So is the athletes behind it. I think it's more that they're aligned with a college. So if you're going to that college, maybe you're being represented by them, I think. But at the same time, I don't know if they have much say in it as an athlete, and B, even if you did, it's not like it's egg on your face, it's egg on Brander's face. So it's a matter of can they keep the story going.
One thing I've noticed in a lot of these articles that Brander is feeding some information to the media to help their own cause. For example, I think they're being factual but not truthful here. The quote in the article, Brander, which says it has agreements with 65 colleges with NCAA football programs and with just under 3,800 players, and says it has contractual right to represent schools and players in negotiations. So if you're just reading that on quick glance, you think, well, 65, that's almost half of the schools. That's including FCS and other levels. That's not just FBS. So there's a bit of embellishment. It's factually, that's true. That's a completely true statement.
And that's probably also the total number of student athletes at those 65 schools too. So.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not
of course.
FBS. So that's not.
Yeah, and I'm sure it even goes down to Division III. As long as it's under the NCAA umbrella, then they can claim it's NCAA football programs.
So how many big schools are really in this 65?
We don't know for sure. There's only been a few ever mentioned. I don't remember who they were off the top of my head, but I don't know. It's just one of those that I'm gonna be glad when this is settled, because it's just getting old. But then we've had legal stuff ended the game. Legal stuff's going to draw it out a little bit further. What's another lawsuit between friends?
Where are these guys getting their money from?
That's a very good question.
I imagine at least one of them's a lawyer.
Yeah, built-in legal department.
Yep.
Let's get to actual game information. Matt Brown at Extra Points with Matt Brown. His Freedom of Information Act request continuing to pay off. He found out that in, I believe, early June, EA had reached out to schools asking for rivalry information. First off, a lot of this information is locked behind a paywall on Matt's site, so I don't want to give away everything because I don't feel like talking to his lawyers or getting a nasty email from Matt. But I will share what he did post publicly on Twitter. In addition to stadium scans, musical assets, helmet stickers, and more, EA Sports is also asking schools to submit rivalry game information for next year's video game. Basically, it looked like a form. He put several screenshots in the article. I can highlight the one here, obviously. One of the questions he wanted to know the name of the rivalry game. EA asked the schools for the official name of the trophy awarded to the winner. Does the university and your rival control the intellectual property rights to the trophy? And if you answered no to the question above, provide contact information for the third party that controls the IP rights to the trophy. So it's one of those that I think it's great they're reaching out, but I will say when I read it, I did have a few questions that came to mind. First off, does this format strike you guys as unique? Are they relying on the schools to provide all this information, or are they kind of cross-checking with what they have? And the secondary is a lot of trophies and rivalries nowadays are corporately sponsored. So in case of the oddball random trophy that's not, and the example we put in the TGT article was Nebraska-Minnesota game, is not a corporate sponsor. It's one that was spawned via Twitter. The fan groups kind of manage it. They raise money for charity. Do the university consider that a proud rivalry trophy that they would list or submit, for example?
Yeah, I think it's more due diligence. I mean, of course, you're going to know the main rivalries for all the big schools, but at the same time, you're not going to know the small rivalries for, Wyoming versus, Boise State or whatever it is. So it's more a matter of, hey, we know 60% of them, 80% of them, whatever it is. What are the ones that we're not thinking of, and give the opportunity for the schools to say, oh yeah, we have the what was it, the UConn and UCF rivalry trophy or whatever. Give them a chance to highlight some of those lesser known trophies that maybe wants to be included in the game as well.
And probably also figure out who to contact for those sponsor driven ones that are the bigger ones.
Absolutely.
So.
One of my concerns when I read that was, and I know this from any business you deal with or interact with, you go in there, let's say you go to a shoe store. Not everybody who works at a shoe store knows everything about shoes. And so every person that they contact at these schools may not know every rivalry game. Or will they do their due diligence to find every game, to find every nickname? Because just because it's rivalry doesn't mean there's a trophy. It could just have a unique name. There could be other things on the line. So it'd be interesting to see. I'm assuming they're cross-checking as well on what this is. But when I saw Matt's article, and all the form and questions. I thought that's a lot of writing and work for somebody at these schools to do, especially if it's somebody who's not getting paid a whole lot to do.
Yeah, and we saw that when we were working with the details of past game details, and there'd be some schools that would be all in with their answers, and some would half-ass their answers to EA. So I'm sure it's probably going to be the same depending on who's getting that email.
Yeah, and I think with it being a new game coming out, I think some of the schools will give it special attention because it hasn't been released in a long time. So let's do it right and get it right the first time. They'll probably have some intern doing it that's actually filling in the paperwork, but at least that intern's supposed to go around to Bobby, Betty, and whoever else to make sure they get all the right information.
Right.
Yeah, and those sponsors will probably want to be in the game too. So
yeah, I'm sure the corporate ones will probably fall over themselves. It's the ones that aren't the big corporate sponsors, which could be the issue. And you can go back and look at Matt's request for the stadium sounds information. When he got the information, what the school sent to EA, some of the schools they sent so much stuff. Some of them sent actual files. They sent songs for every instance in the game. And then there's some programs that sent like 2. They sent like the fight song and that's it. As a fan, you would think all the schools would want all the details right. But it's just like any other business you go to. You go into some places, the people know what they're doing. Sometimes you go in at the wrong time and that person has no clue what is going on. So hopefully they're getting to the right people.
Well, and the other the other interesting part is with the stadium sounds, if they're sending copies of let's say the band playing the fight song or something like that, it may be a studio recording that once you put it into the game sounds absolutely awful. It doesn't sound, like a true live event recording. Right. So, that's kind of a delicate balance as well, because even if they did have a true live event recording, then how much crowd noise do you have included in that recording? So it's going to be tricky if EA is not re-recording these audio themselves. Who knows if they are or are not? But that's going to kind of be a little bit tricky, I think, in the end.
This was a question posed to Matt Brown by Jonathan Craig Hayes. I don't know if there's any relation to Willie Mays Hayes on that. He's at Triple Crown 9. He asked, any word on if schools that are doing stadium upgrades, mainly Texas Tech, expected to be done for the 24th season, got that input to EA to be truly up to date next summer? Matt's response I thought was pretty interesting. Actually, yes. Was told schools doing construction projects could share renderings of what construction will look like and can be fleshed out with other photos later. Think about a half dozen schools are in this boat. On PS3, it seemed like the stadiums and expansions could only get in the game if they were scanned. I remember people would always ask that, and EA would say, if we didn't scan it, it's not going in. Well, it seems like something has changed, that now they don't have to necessarily scan entire stadiums or scan the entire renovations, that they can base it off of construction renderings and photos. So I think that's a noteworthy change or addition of some sort.
For sure. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how well they can recreate these schools. And in a rendering, it's going to be, 80% correct, but then the other 20% is going to be kind of noticeable. So it's a matter of, will EA get to fix it before release? Like they won't have all of the pictures for Texas Tech, for example, before they actually launch the game, I imagine. So, it's something we had conversation with them in the past, that they don't want to spend all of the effort to design a stadium or do all of this detail work that then only have to turn around and redo it again because it was slightly off from what they had in the rendering. So it'll be interesting to see how they can translate those pictures and renderings into the actual stadium.
Let's get to some community questions and highlights that we had on the Gaming Tailgate account and just in general that we saw. Custom conferences, going back to the big news we had at the start of the show with seemingly losing the entire Pac-12 while we were gone, while Tommy was on his island. Luka MVP season, he talked about custom conferences, and this is something that way back in the TGT Podcast number 33, JB and I talked about this stuff. He says, I know that custom conferences was in the past, but it needs to be enhanced. The ability to add removed, I believe he means removed conferences, ability to grow a conference and expand playoff, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I don't think we're breaking any ground there, but he has a good point. Whenever they do custom conferences, they're going to have to go big, because the way the landscape is changing, no idea is really out of the realm of possibility at this point.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that they're looking at, like 2 mega conferences between SEC and Big Ten by the end of this. So it's a matter of, can EA recreate that easily enough and still be able to have schedules and be able to have conference pods and whatever else, crazy that people come up with for the next round of conference realignment. I mean, I don't envy EA because, again, it's one of those things that nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 2 years. We didn't know what was happening 2 weeks ago, kind of thing.
Right.
So, I mean, it's one of those that you kind of have to be able to be a little bit flexible, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to get agreements with conferences like, the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or something like that, and then turn around and say, oh, by the way, we can, throw you out with the trash during the first season if the player wants to. So,
right.
There's a little bit of balance that you have to have there. And, again, I'm all for flexibility, but at the same time, you have to balance it out a little bit.
Well, that flexibility is going to be for more EA than us. It's going to be more for them to be able to adjust year by year. They don't have to be as flexible as you think they have to be, because they've got a good idea what's going to be happening for the 2024 season and the 2025 season at this point. Now, especially with the Pac-10 or Pac-10, Pac-12 going down. So they can be flexible, but to a point, because they know exactly how the landscape should look, basically, come then, unless Notre Dame shocks the world and joins a conference.
I think things could change drastically next spring. Stanford and Cal could go somewhere, January 1 or February 1. That's probably the doomsday scenario, is that they leave or do something when the game's starting to lock down assets, when they think they have the couple conferences, just the base conferences figured out. No, we're going to go also into the ACC. I'm sure somebody at EA is going to be throwing papers in the air. What the hell do we do now, boys?
Well, those remaining four got to do something. And
right. They're going somewhere, whether it's Mountain West or ACC.
Yeah, to me, it's one of two scenarios. Either the Pac-12 is gone or the Mountain West is gone by this time next year. I don't think they're both going to be able to survive. I think you're going to have to, a lot of teams are going to get shuffled around. It's kind of a little bit of a madhouse.
It's going to be amazing if Pac-12 does survive that and actually kills the Mountain West. But the mismanagement and thing, I just don't think it's going to survive, but you never know.
I would think it'd be like the Big East basketball. It'd be poor choice of words, it'd be a mutiny. The Mountain West will say, we're just going to take your teams and we're going to take your dang name. We are now the Pac-12. We're the captain now.
I'm the captain.
We're the Pac-12 now. I mean, why would those?
Yeah,
because the four schools have no bargaining power.
It's hard to
have the bargaining power.
It's hard to fathom the Pac-12 coming out of this now, just because of how mismanaged they've been ever since passing on Texas. Basically, is the beginning of the downfall. Mountain West is pretty secure. I don't think Pac-12 can just invade them. And I don't think those schools want to even go there and touch that.
They'd rather have their commissioner than Klyovkov. I'll tell you that right now.
But at the end of the day, I think it's all marketing. I mean, which name is bigger, Mountain West or Pac-12? So, I mean, that's easy enough. Right. But then as well, you're almost going to have to take the whole conference at the same time, because nobody's going to want to pay buyouts to go to a dying conference.
No.
So it's definitely something that in the real college football world, there's a lot of things to work out that, again, I don't envy EA trying to replicate that.
One thing EA needs to do is that if they ever have their sites on a custom conference feature where you can select old conference logos, they need to get on the phone with the Pac-12 now to get rights to those old logos, like the Pac-10 and everything before the Pac-10 offices close up for good. Well, somebody's there to answer the phone, and maybe they can get it on the cheap for, a bag of lima beans, the rights to use those images down the line. Because there's potential, a year from now, there's going to be nobody who's going to own the rights to that stuff. Continuing on the custom conference talk, our friend Taylor Malone. This shows how quickly time goes by. He sent this first to Cover 3 podcast and also to us. He said, would be cool to set this up in EA Sports College Football. He goes, hear me out. Oregon, Washington to the Big 12. FSU, Clemson to SEC. Notre Dame and Pitt to the Big 10. The rest of the ACC and Pac-12 combined into one conference. Boom, Power 4. Okay, Power 3 with a weaker, significant fourth conference. I like the ideas. I wish we could do it in the game. But it's funny how much, this, I think, basically was after the Colorado left. And then all hell broke loose after that. And now a lot of this is probably not even feasible at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything's moving way too fast. I don't like it personally, just as a college football fan, but at the same time, you're going to be able to come up with these crazy scenarios in EA Sports' game. You may not be able to get down to just 4 power conferences. Who knows by that time, but it's there'll be a wide variety of scenarios you can move people around. I would expect at a minimum something to mimic NCAA 14 custom conferences, but I imagine with everything that's happened, they'll probably try to expand it well beyond that.
Right. I would think there'd be a 2.0, but then that makes me think, well, is that going to be a year 1 or not?
Yeah. Every time news breaks, EA is probably like, damn it.
Maybe they're not even going to work on it yet. Just wait until okay. Now we're locked in. Whatever we're doing now is going to be in the game.
Let's let the smoke clear.
Well, then the Big Ten, they announced they took forever dragging their feet to get a schedule out. And they finally announced for 24 and 25, and then they add Oregon and Washington, so they got to start all over as well. And that's another thing that has to go into the game is the future schedule. So what a nightmare. Let's go on to Dustin 14 Brown. He hit us up, says, guys, enjoyed and loved the video. Well, that's because he has great taste. If David Pollock was in commentary for the new EA Sports College football game, but got fired from ESPN, does EA keep him in the game or take his recording and him out of the game now? Now, Pollock did a little bit of commentary for NC 14 around the halftime show. He would pipe in with Reese Davis. So him being in the game would not be out of the realm of possibility. My guess, and I'll let you guys weigh in, if he was in the game, he's probably being removed because it's early enough now they can get somebody else to come in and record. But if this firing had happened in, say, March or April, then he probably lives on. But I'm going to guess that if he was in the game, he's probably going to be replaced.
Wasn't there some announcer or somebody that was like gone, but like if you like was deeply hidden within the commentary?
That was Ask Corso. Ask Corso would randomly, when he pop up on kickoffs, I think he would show up and say something. Do you remember that, Tommy? I don't remember what years that was. They finally eradicated it, but there was something where you get Corso to chime in the game.
Yeah, very vaguely. I remember they eventually took that out, but yeah, it still popped up in the oddest of places or something like that. So
yeah, it's not that I thought on kickoffs, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
I mean, as far as Pollock goes, there's nothing to say that EA can't have him in the game. I mean, it's not like they have an agreement with ESPN. That said, I completely agree. At this point, yeah, I mean, maybe, who knows? Again, I was talking about past games. I cannot speak to next year's game at all.
Right.
You know, they may have a full agreement with ESPN. Who knows? But anyways, long story short, at this point, I can't imagine that he would still be in the game regardless. Like you said, there's plenty of time for somebody to come in and record those lines. Maybe they even get an amateur or an unknown professional to do those lines instead or something like that. So it's one of those things that, as I said, it's one of those things that they have to kind of balance between getting the atmosphere, but then also can't be tied to too many personalities. I mean, Herb Street, yes, but beyond that, who else can you really, hitch your wagon to?
And why would you use anything from 10 years ago? Why don't you just start completely from scratch?
Oh, I imagine most of it they will. I imagine 90% of it. Maybe they have a few lines that they keep, but yeah, I'm sure most of it they're gonna start fresh.
Plus, Madden's not tied to a network. You got Brandon Godden who does what, fourth or fifth team at Fox with Charles Davis, but I mean there's no
Braves baseball.
Yeah, there's no Fox affiliation, even though they both do Fox games, and he also does college, obviously too. So, would be surprised if Godden might be the guy that calls college too. You never know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I will say I'm sure that they stick to Herb Street, just because he's kind of now the face of college football, and especially as long as he's still tied to ESPN, then that kind of gives them that hook as well. But beyond him, I think they're very flexible. I imagine.
They might look for young up-and-comers, like you said. I would think they want this game to appear, as fresh and new as possible. Even though there's been a 10-year delay between the two versions, I would think that they might go fresh. And
I would tell you a guy to use that would be great, a fresh face that is really doing a good job would be Ian Eagle's son. I can't remember what his first name is, but he's been doing, I think, Stanford basketball, but now he's starting to do NFL stuff. He did the Nickelodeon coverage, and now I think he's gotten hired by CBS, I think. But he's really, and he's like in his late 20s now, I think. Sounds pretty close to his father, who's a great NFL commentator in his own right, plus March Madness among everything else. But that would be if you're looking for some fresh talent. Noah Eagle is his name, by the way. He does the Big Ten Saturday night for NBC Sports. He just got hired. That's the new thing that's going to debut this fall, is that NBC Big Ten game. He's calling that game. So I think that'd be a perfect play-by-play guy to use for college football. He's 25 years old.
I think if you're going to go with a known entity like somebody like that, you'd want somebody that's more college side than pro side or
yeah, he's doing the Big Ten games. So
okay, yeah. So I mean, maybe that's how that works out. But again, yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
And they may pick somebody who lives close to Orlando. I think that was one of the things with Godden and Davis. Those guys live relatively close to the studio, so they can get them in quicker to record lines. But I know they also do some stuff remotely. So it'll be interesting. I don't know who they'll go after. That was a good question, though. Thank you for sending that in.
You're welcome.
Anytime.
Maybe put the guy on my back shoulder in the game there, Pat McAfee.
Like, are you pointing at the blank wall?
I know. I
know where it was behind you.
Put this guy in right here. This guy.
He was going off the screen and not actually looking.
Put this guy in the game.
Put this guy.
This guy. And then you just put a random face up there. This guy goes into the game.
Yeah, I gotta figure out a way to. Yeah, I'm gonna green screen somebody into that. It's gonna be great. I wanted to highlight this from the community. Joe Johnson, Quizit graphic designer. I wish I could do this stuff. He made a big Florida State fan. Put out, what if EA made a premium edition of the game with a custom locker? Of course, he's a big Florida State fan, so we get more Florida State. And we know EA loves Florida State historically. That's always the joke, is that Florida State overrated in the game because they have so many devs working in the studio.
Wonder why.
And I'll say right now, just not to change the subject, UCF is going to be the school that's going to get the accusation of being overrated in the future editions of college football, with so many full sale devs and people from Central Florida fans working on the dev team. That's going to be the school that's going to be overrated. In addition, probably to Florida State.
Keep toting that fake national title too.
So he made this custom controller, a hat, and a version of the game. I thought it was pretty neat. I wanted to show it off just because pretty cool looking.
Mini helmet, I think, would be perfect instead of the hat.
Yeah, and I'd say, I know it's something we talked about on the prediction show, is that I'm in the camp of they got to do something physical for a collector's edition. So when I saw this, I thought, we're going to highlight this. This is a great work by Joe Johnson.
I like the locker idea. I think a mini helmet would be perfect in place of the hat there, but I like the locker idea, though.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Real quickly, guys, week 0 kicks off this weekend. I don't like the term week 0. It's week 1. But anyway, Tommy, what matchup are you looking forward to? I think you've been dropping a hint all episode, and I don't know if the viewers have caught it.
I mean, I'm not like a huge fan of them, but I mean, I always love the kickoff game in Ireland. Notre Dame Navy starting this year. To me, that's kind of an exciting way to start the season off. So definitely, I'll be tuning in for that one. From there, I'll probably jump around to a few other games. Watch as many as I can. But like you, I mean, I don't like calling it week 0, but at the same time, it is just kind of a little bit of a tease for the first weekend. Right. Because, I mean, none of these matchups to me are exciting. San Jose State and USC. I mean, again, like I said, outside of Notre Dame and Navy, none of them just jump off at the page. So I'm more looking forward to the following weekend.
Yeah, maybe the obviously Nebraska is a big one with our new coach. But, outside of that, yeah, I mean, week 0 is basically just your appetizer for the big. It isn't Florida Utah. It is Thursday.
The following Thursday. That's considered week 1.
That's considered week 1. Okay, geez.
Yep. Yeah.
Saturday is week 0. Like Tommy said, the big one is Navy Notre Dame. Probably, I would say
that's my birthday.
Hawaii. Happy 50th, JB. Hawaii Vanderbilt. I think a little intrigued just because there's people thinking Vanderbilt can make a bowl this year. I don't know if I see that.
And Vanderbilt hasn't even finished their stadium construction yet.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
I don't know if you guys saw that.
I have seen that or heard about that. They might be finishing it as they play the game. Like during kickoff, they might be finally doing the last pieces of it. San Jose State, USC, just see if USC
that could be a shootout.
Better. Yeah.
That could be a shootout though, too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those that if this was the end of the year, we'd say it was an awful week. But since it kicks off the year, it's a great week.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think this is a bad week personally, but
it's an easy sell for all the networks to say we put football out there, and it's live football that counts, kind of thing. So,
and it's better than what we have watched the past weekend, which was not.
And what the hell is $Flow Video? Is that Flo Rida's channel or
I
what?
don't I think I've seen basketball games on there, but yet there's another thing you got to pay for. It's one of those.
I think the $ just indicates it's a subscription, just like below there's a $, but in front of ESPN Plus. So it's just I've never heard of Flow, but
I thought it was part of their logo.
No, it's Flow Sports, but I don't know what I think they show a lot of basketball. So with that, we'll wrap up the show. Next episode, guys, let's get into a little Madden NFL 24 talk, because I know we've all played it. We want a little more time in before we break it down. And again, I think a lot of people this year might pick it up just because they want to get used to the controls and the basic gameplay before they pick up EA Sports College Football next summer. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show, everyone. For Tommy, for Jeremy, I'm CDJ. Everyone, thanks for watching.
On the next Gaming Tailgate podcast, we have confirmed that they're looking at next summer for the release date.
Anytime.
Maybe we could put the guy on my back shoulder in the game there, Pat McAfee.
I like how you pointed at the blank wall.
I know. I
know where it was behind you.
Put this guy in right here. This guy.
He was going off the screen and not actually looking.
Put this guy in the game.
Put this guy.
This guy. And then you just put a random face up there. This guy goes into the game.
Yeah, I gotta figure out a way to. Yeah, I'm gonna green screen somebody into that. It's gonna be great.